Hi everyone, my name is Jenny Kwok and I'd like to welcome you to the DMSBU User Experience Series. This is the first episode out of many to come. So we thought that we would start this show since user experience is truly a wide-ranging practice that touches every single part of the BU. So really what we're hoping is that this show will continue to keep you updated on what's going on in this space and help you identify ways that you can participate in the process. So, and just to kind of give you an overview of the user experience team within DMSBU, so there's myself, who is now just about 4 months new to the organization, and we have just added a new designer named Darren Wong, who is now just a few days starting into this organization. And hopefully we'll be really building out the team itself to support the many different product lines that are now evolving within the business unit. So I just wanted to talk then a little bit about what user experience is and why it is that Thomas Wyatt, so our GM for the business unit, has really started to put more emphasis on this role within the group. It's been interesting. I've actually been participating in user experience work now for almost 8 years at Cisco, and I've really seen a transformation of the way that the company has, participated in this process and the emphasis that they've put on what really user experience is to the company. If you asked me 8 years ago, people really didn't understand the value of what a good user experience was. I think that in our heydays in the late 90s, we were really a technology company, and it was almost the more advanced our technology was and even harder to use, our customers actually dealt very well with that. They actually felt that the harder it was for them to figure out how to use it, it was more exclusive to them, that they actually really understood this technology. It was almost an attitude of arrogance, I think, that the company had, and it fit well with who our customers were at the time. I think, though, that with the rise of Web 2.0 and this whole sense of user participation being very important to the experience, Cisco has really opened its mind to the value of its users and being able to be providing products that are very simple to use and easy to install and not something so complex to use. So it's really been interesting to see this transformation within the company, and I think that we started to see different business units start to put more emphasis on this role at Cisco. And hopefully what we will see is a transformation of our product brand and experience. I mean, we look at companies like Apple, leading the way in this space, and you can see that what they have is truly a unified user experience. I mean, from the phones itself, the hardware, to the laptops, to the displays, everything looks like it's part of the same family. And truly, as you start to interact with the products, they're all equally easy to use. And once you learn a certain interaction behavior on one device, it's all across every single device that you use. You don't have to relearn the same functions. And I think that just is something that we will take us a long time to get there, but it's just nice to see that the company is starting to pay more attention in this space. So since in this show we'll be focusing on various parts of the user experience and user-centered design process, I thought that we could talk a little bit about what are the components of the user experience process, so that you could all be familiarized with some of the terminology that we'll be using. So this is a chart provided by a well-known industry advocate for user experience named Jesse James Garrett, and this is his view of kind of the different components of the elements of user experience. So at the very top level, we have what we call visual design. And that's obviously the most apparent piece of the user experience. It's really the presentation layer. It includes the colors and the typography and visual elements such as that. One layer beneath that, we have what we call information design. And information design is really more the way that you present the hierarchy of information. So when we're designing screens, we really want to think about what's the first part of that screen, or that the functions presented on that screen that we want the user to really pay attention to first, and then second and third in kind of an ongoing order. And that also will include such things as the interface design of how we allow a user to select components, and let's say, using checkboxes or radio buttons. It gets down to that level of detail. One level below that, we have what we call interaction design and information architecture. So that might actually include, what's the actual flow of how we want a user to get from one screen to the next, or how do we want a user to actually be presented with several options, whether they want to, first we want to ask them to create an administrator role for themselves, or create a content manager role for themselves. We basically want to present, okay, we want to cut this part out. We basically want to build the entire architecture of the interaction at this level. So, and then one level below that, we have functional specifications and content requirements. And at the most basic level, we have the user and what their needs are. So at every single level of the user experience, we have different, skill sets that we have to strengthen in order to be able to design within those areas. So at every single level, we actually have a different role within user experience that supports that function. So at the user needs level, we actually have researchers who go out and interview customers and conduct any kind of research, whether it be presenting the actual designs and asking users to actually work through and use a prototype to better understand which areas of the application are presenting user issues or usability issues. And then, at the interaction design level, we have very highly specialized interaction designers who all they focus on is that particular piece, and their output are usually very complex concept maps, which map to user mental models of how people actually think about a certain problem, and down to wireframes, which actually wireframe out how a particular page layout will look and function. So another common question that I'm faced with a lot at Cisco and even outside of Cisco is, why do we want to use the user-centered design process, and why do we have user experience groups participating in product development? So the truth of the matter is that there's been a lot of research that's been done to this point, and over the last 20, 30 years about how does design early on in the process impact the overall timeline. So this is actually just a very well-known chart which kind of shows kind of the PLC, or now known CPDM process, through the different phases of designing, building, implementing, supporting, and maintaining, and then the ability to impact the product is this orange figure here, and the cost of changing it. So you see that the earlier you try to make a change in the process, the cost is very low, and you have a high ability to impact the product at this point. So things are usually just in design wireframe format here. So moving a page 3 steps early in the process is actually much easier to do when it's in a wireframe state than if the product had already been developed and you have to go back and open up the code and change at that point. It costs a lot more. So I think the figure is actually 10 times more expensive to change a product after it's already been developed than if you're just changing it in the design concept process. So this is, a chart that I frequently show. There's also a lot of other statistics that we can go into detail later on about actual figures and case studies about, large companies Like Sun Microsystems has a case study around how they saved, hundreds of millions of dollars in employing a user-centered design process. So one other thing I thought I would share with you today is just a quick update on where we're at with user experience in DMSBU today. So I mentioned that I've been part of the organization for about 4 months now, and in the 4 months, we've made tremendous progress. To date, we have had one usability session that was organized in the very beginning of my tenure here to really just kind of identify where we're at with our interfaces and the overall design of the product. And I mean, the feedback that we've received about DMS products to date is that everyone values the amount of functionality and the great technology that we're providing, but most of our users feel that we have a lot of growing to do in terms of simplifying the interface and making it more consistent with experiences that they're more used to. And so that was, the general overall findings of the usability study. And so it really helped myself focus on what are the short-term wins that we could have for the Leia release, which is, the 4.1 release, which is actually just, I think, now available to order as of last week. And, being that I came so late into the process when, again, like things had already been developed and me just coming in and trying to tweak things was a really painful process. I mean, it was a painful, but I think very valuable learning process for myself. And really was just kind of, at this point, getting to know each of the engineers. And I think it was just, it was still good to kind of see the culture of the group at this point and try to make as much impact as I could in a very short amount of time. So you'll see that with the Leia release that we have been able to incorporate some minor interface improvements. So, changing things such as the terminology, making some of the icons a little bit more easy to understand, and really not much more than that. But I think that at least the immediate feedback that we've received from the field is that those small visual design improvements was actually big enough for them to notice a difference between 4.0 and 4.1. Really where we'll start to see the biggest changes is with the next release. And so for the last 2 months and probably for the next three to 4 more months, we're really kind of heads down focused on the Yoda release, which is really going to introduce huge improvements to the user experience. We are actually working and partnering with Voice Technology Group to apply what they've come up with is a new consumer branding for web applications. And I actually have a screenshot here which kind of will share with you that. So this is actually a screenshot, a screen capture of today's product. So it's the digital media manager, the digital signage module. And this is the view of what customers will see when they log in to the product. So you can see that it has, some of our older branding elements. It's got, the older teal color and, the new logo. But it's just, first off, this is some of the feedback that we receive from customers, that this chart here of DMP access status really doesn't mean much to them, and they want to be able to see more useful content when they log into the application. So we've made, through a lot of research and through our design process, we've been able to come up with a new design for the landing screen of the Digital Media Manager digital signage module, and this is what you'll see here. So again, you'll see there's a vast change in the overall color scheme and the branding, and this is, again, provided through the new consumer branding initiative led by Cordell Ratzlaff's team. And so we were able to kind of be a guinea pig for applying this to one of our products. And, so you can see that, I don't want to go into too much in detail here, but we've basically surfaced a lot of the functionality that is most commonly used by a user here on the first screen. You know, the schedule, you can see just a quick snapshot of what has been scheduled to play on the digital signs, and you know, their most recently updated assets, such as their presentations or video, audio files. And then, you know, just a quick snapshot of what their DMP access status is. And then quick links into adjusting any of their settings, frequently used settings. So again, that's just a quick snapshot I wanted to share with you today. And in future sessions, we'll definitely be able to delve into more detail around why we've really redesigned, or how we've redesigned some of the major sections of the application, and share with you, you know, what some of the methodology was into getting there. And I think that there's a lot more of this process that we'll want each of you to be more heavily involved in. And this will be a good way for you to stay in sync with what's going on and know how to stay involved. So another example I thought I would share with you today, which really kind of highlights the transformation of an interface by employing some of the user-centered design techniques that I'll be talking about later today, is an actual. It's not a real interface, but it's actually an exercise which we can pretend is one. So I'm starting here with a view of some numbers, right? So what does this look like to you? Really, just it's nothing at this point other than just a bunch of numbers. But kind of the first thing that we can apply here is some table headers, right? Very simple, basic way of showing some meaning behind these numbers. So we saw that they're not actually truly just random numbers. They're actually average rainfall numbers in inches per month for 5 major cities within the U.S. And you know, we could actually stop at this point, which, you know, I think actually a lot of our applications and websites and products would stop at this point, just in being able to show the most basic information values around these numbers. But what we can do is take it one step further and apply a little bit more granularity to the visual design to delineate, you know, making the numbers darker and more bold, and the title of the table a little bit more apparent. And this is just a really simple visual design update. One other layer we can add is identifying some of the patterns that we see within the numbers. So what we've done is actually started to outline in a darker shade of blue the areas that had more rainfall per month. And then you can start to see some patterns of the rainfall. And again, so you can see at this point that with these simple visual design indicators, you actually save the user some processing time. They would probably not even have seen this pattern in the table had they not sat there for, you know, at least a good 10 minutes and studied the table. But this provides a nice summary of this pattern for the user. And then, you know, taking it even one step further, and this is, you know, getting a little bit into a more of a playful interaction design, but, you know, making the raindrops appear larger for those areas that had heavier rainfall. I mean, that even takes it one step further in helping the user identify what the difference is between the darker shades of blue from the lighter shades. And then finally, we could actually make a little web application out of that data, and you know, this would actually be a picker that you could, you know, scan across the different months, and as you move across those months, the raindrops would actually grow or shrink in size, depending on, you know, how heavy the rainfall was in that city for that month. So, you know, it's not to say that this is actually a truly useful application, but, you know, it was more of an exercise to show you that, you know, starting with something as simple as just a table of numbers, you can actually do a lot with interaction design to make that data a lot more informative and helpful to the user. So that's all there that we'll cover today, but we look forward to seeing you in future sessions. Thank you.